All right, class. So we have talked a lot about oxygen, right? How oxygen is transported. Now let's try to understand how carbon dioxide is transported in blood. So this will be all hand drawn, and this is usually what I draw in class in a regular face-to-face class. So in green, you see a body cell. In red, you see a capillary. Inside a capillary, there is an RBC. My RBC shape is super weird because I just want to show you what's going on in there. That's why it's a huge RBC that I have drawn. And then in blue, I have an alveolus. So we will start with the body cell in the left and then move towards the right. All right. So first, in the body cell, there is metabolic functions, right? So there is metabolism going on. Due to this metabolism, what is being produced? Carbon dioxide is being produced. And the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the cell is about 46 millimeter of mercury. Okay. This, and then in the capillary, the partial pressure of PCO2 is 40 millimeter of mercury. So we do see there is a pressure difference, right? 46 millimeter of mercury in the body cell and 40 millimeter of mercury in the capillary. Therefore, you tell me, which way will carbon dioxide move? Carbon dioxide will move from the cell into the plasma first. But then it doesn't like to be in plasma. It's like, I should go to the RBC. So it enters the RBC. Okay. So the carbon dioxide now enters the RBC. So we have carbon dioxide here. Within the RBC, there is an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. This carbonic anhydrase converts carbon dioxide. Actually, it helps to combine carbon dioxide with water to form carbonic acid, H2CO3, which is carbonic acid. So, carbon dioxide enters plasma first. From plasma, it diffuses into the RBC. Inside the RBC, carbon dioxide combines with water, and there is an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase, which helps carbon dioxide and water to form carbonic acid. The carbonic acid then immediately dissociates to form hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ion. The hydrogen ion binds to hemoglobin so that it doesn't change the pH of RBC. So it binds to hemoglobin. Okay. And the bicarbonate, what happens to bicarbonate? There is a transporter here. With the help of this transporter, the bicarbonate leaves, let me use a different color. The bicarbonate leaves the RBC and comes into the plasma. So we have a lot of bicarbonate in plasma now. And in return, chloride enters the RBC. Okay. I want you to remember one thing. 70% of carbon dioxide that is produced in the cell gets converted into bicarbonate that is transported via plasma. So let me write this down. 70% of carbon dioxide is transported as bicarbonate. Alrighty, that was only 70%. What's the matter with the rest of carbon dioxide? Okay. I want you to remember that RBC has hemoglobins. Do you remember that? Within the RBC, we had these hemoglobins. Do you remember? And what was there on the hemoglobins? I'll just draw two. Okay, I'll just draw two. The hemoglobins had seats. Remember, it has seats for oxygen. Okay. And then to these seats, there are oxygen attached. Right? Now, remember at the tissue level, the affinity for hemoglobin decreases. So the affinity between oxygen and hemoglobin decreases. Now, carbon dioxide, some of the carbon dioxide that enters, why doesn't it let me pick? So some of the carbon dioxide enters, and this carbon dioxide thinks, I should actually just sit on the hemoglobin. So this carbon dioxide sits on the hemoglobin along with 3 oxygen molecules. Do you see that? And gets transported. And this is about 23%. 23% of carbon dioxide, I should erase this. 23% of carbon dioxide binds to hemoglobin and gets transported. All right. So, my dear, this was number 1 route. This is number 2 route. Do you agree? What else? What else? Thirdly, some carbon dioxide, and I'll use a totally different color for this. Let me put some carbon dioxide just remains in plasma. It's just remain dissolved in plasma. It does not form carbonic acid. It's just dissolved in plasma. And when this carbon dioxide is dissolved, and that's about 7%. So number 3, 7% is dissolved in plasma. And please hear me. As this carbon dioxide gets dissolved in plasma, that causes the now that it has a lot of carbonic acid and carbon dioxide on the hemoglobin and carbon dioxide dissolved in plasma, now the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in plasma becomes 46 millimeter of mercury. So let's review this one more time. So we start with looking at a body cell. Then we see a capillary. Inside the capillary, there is an RBC. And then we also see an alveolus. We know that in the body cell, there is metabolism going on. So a lot of carbon dioxide is being produced as byproduct. Due to this due to this carbon dioxide production, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the body cell is about 46 millimeter of mercury. If you look into the capillary at that point, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is about 40 millimeter of mercury. Right here. So there is a pressure gradient, right? We have 46 in the body cell and 40 in the capillary. Therefore, carbon dioxide will leave the cell and diffuse in the plasma. However, it doesn't stay in plasma. Carbon dioxide gets into the RBC. Within the RBC, there is an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase, which allows carbon dioxide to get mixed with water to form carbonic acid. Carbonic acid immediately dissociates to form hydrogen ions and bicarbonate ion. The hydrogen ion binds to hemoglobin to prevent change in RBC pH. The bicarbonate is transported out of the RBC into the plasma by a pump. And in return, the RBC gets chloride into the cell. All right, that was route number 1. The other route is that we have carbon dioxide getting into the RBC. However, this carbon dioxide will just bind to the hemoglobin and get transported via hemoglobin along with 3 oxygen molecules. That's okay. And then the third route is when carbon dioxide gets dissolved in plasma, simply plasma. And I want you to remember that about 70% of carbon dioxide is transported as bicarbonate in plasma. About 23% of carbon dioxide is transported by binding to hemoglobin, and about 7% of carbon dioxide is transported in plasma in dissolved state. All right. Now what happens? Let's look into the alveolus. Within the alveolus, the pressure of carbon dioxide is 40 millimeter of mercury. So obviously we see a difference in gradient, right? We have 46 here, we have 40 here. So first, actually let me use the other PowerPoint here. So we have 40 PCO2 is 40 millimeter of mercury, and then here we have PCO2 at 46 millimeter of mercury. Okay, so first what will happen is the carbon dioxide that was dissolved here, remember the dissolved carbon dioxide will just diffuse into the alveoli. That's the first one. Secondly, do you remember the carbon dioxide on hemoglobin? Those carbon dioxide will fall off the hemoglobin and it'll come into the alveolus. Okay. And thirdly, so everything will be reversed. Do you remember there was bicarbonate in plasma? This bicarbonate will move back into the RBC. So we have this protein here. So the bicarbonate enters back, and then bicarbonate will then combine with hydrogen to form carbonic acid. This carbonic acid will then dissociate to form water and carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide will now diffuse out and come into the alveolus. As bicarbonate is getting into the RBC, we have chloride coming out. So to review, at the alveolus, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the alveolus is 40 millimeter of mercury, and with all the carbon dioxide in the capillary, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the capillary is 46 millimeter of mercury. So we do see a pressure gradient here. So first, the dissolved carbon dioxide from the plasma will diffuse into the alveolus. So that's number 1. Then the carbon dioxide that was bound to the hemoglobin will then diffuse into the alveolus. That's number 2. And thirdly, remember all the bicarbonate floating in the plasma, it gets back into the RBC, combines with hydrogen ion to form carbonic acid, which then dissociates to form water and carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide then enters the alveolus by diffusion. So this is number 3. All right, so that concludes my lecture on the respiratory system.